It's sometimes hard to know if what Jesus says was intended quite literally as poetry, or if it was poetic. Jesus spoke these words in Matthew 6, Sermon on the Mount, in Aramaic. Of course, the Aramaic was translated to Greek, and then it was translated to English. And this text in Matthew 6 has something of a sing-song rhythm and rhyme to it. It has poetic qualities. And if a text has poetic qualities, then I assume that it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take it completely, literally, word for word, as in you should never ever worry about anything regarding the next 24 hours. Even if that's what Jesus said, most of you are not going to take him at his word. You're not cashing in the 401ks. You're not thinking about groceries this week. You're going to worry about tomorrow to some degree. So I assume that when Jesus offers us these words, there is a particular kind of worry that he is talking about. And he is also talking to a specific group of people, a certain group who have pretty much dropped everything, the disciples, in order to be there in that particular moment. It would seem that these folks, these disciples who have gathered at the feet of Jesus, are worried about something. And Jesus, as a teacher and also as a pastor, offers these words. Don't worry about tomorrow. We are worried, many of us. It's a tense moment, a tense time. We live in a tense culture. I don't know how you could possibly quantify this, but are we among the most worried groups of people to ever grace this planet? We left the safe space, or seemingly safe space, of pre-9/11 many years ago, of course. I was reminded of a simple fact recently while leading our confirmation class these past couple of months, that our confirmands now are people who were born after September 11th, 2001. They have never known a day when the United States was not at war. They have never known a day when the United States was not at war. They have never known a day where we weren't talking about threat levels to some degree or another. I need people like Wendell Berry. I need people like Wendell Berry to speak to me. Wendell Berry once wrote, "When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free." Jesus tells us to do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring worries of its own. Today's trouble is enough for today. But even then, today's troubles may well be deep and difficult, painful, or paralyzing. This week, our General Minister and President of the United Church of Christ, John Dorhauer, in concert with the leader of the Disciples of Christ denomination, published a statement, and it reads in part, just a small part. They wrote together, "It is tragic that our country continues to witness the scapegoating and systematic collective punishment that it has known in the past. During World War II, those of Japanese heritage were interned. In former eras, it was Catholics, Jews, and repeatedly Asians who were refused entry or inclusion into our immigrant nation. Today we watch still as a new manifestation of Jim Crow leads to the mass incarceration of great numbers of African Americans. We've experienced how fear and suspicion lead to institutionalized discrimination and systematic dehumanization of whole communities. We are appalled by the punitive and discriminatory rhetoric and actions by many political leaders to restrict and deny the admission of Syrian refugees because they're Syrian or because they are Muslim. Such attitudes are contrary to our understanding of our nation's values and to our reading of our sacred scriptures. Such restrictions and limitations only make the displaced Syrian population doubly victimized, victims of the violence of war and victims of the violence of hatred and bigotry. We aspire to something greater than this. That phrase has stayed with me the last several days. We aspire to something greater than this. I can say those words, we aspire, with a tear in my eye as I lament our poisoned political public discourse. But I can also say we aspire to something greater than this in reflecting upon my own community with gratitude, with a smile, with a deep sense of fulfillment, for we not only aspire to something greater than this, we try to live it out. In this passage in Matthew 6, Jesus is pushing us to abandon one of our favorite occupations. If we all had second jobs, it would probably be as warriors. Jesus asks us, instead, favor in trusting God. We aspire to something greater than this. Jesus persuades us to consider that my other loyalties are in conflict, or could be in conflict, with the ways of this beautiful messenger, for we aspire to something greater than this. I am being asked, and you are being asked, to consider concretely, consider the lilies of the field. No, really, think about them, dream about them, the lilies of the field, how they neither spin nor toil, or in my context, the carpets of wild flowers that grow across this country in the summer, the goldenrod and the black-eyed Susans of the west, and the foliage of the east in the fall, the leaves as they fall. We aspire to something greater than this. And Jesus asks you to consider the birds and the grass. Jesus asks you to consider food and clothing. And also, I believe, compels us to consider that we aspire to something greater. It is in this week that we hear these words of Jesus when we all need them. We always need such words, that today's troubles are enough. Tomorrow will come, but today is enough. That we should consider the lilies precisely because of something that Anthony de Mello, a Jesuit priest from India, once said. De Mello said, "You sanctify what you are grateful for." To sanctify is to set apart for a particular use, and a special purpose or work. It is to make holy or sacred. It is decidedly other in a beautiful way. De Mello, although he died in 1987, would have much to say about our current context. An Indian Jesuit who incorporated Hindu meditation practices into his Catholic spirituality, he was, of course, chastised by the leaders of his church for a less than pure theology. De Mello's theological construct practiced differentiating between the me stuff, all the stuff that is attached to me, job or profession, affection from others, power. Divorce that from the I, all the ways in which I am feeling, thinking, sensing in concert with the Creator. what I am in light of what God has made me to be, who I am as God's child, who I am as a part of the Easter people, who I am, one who believes either literally or symbolically in resurrection, who I am, one who is drawn by hope. These words sound a good deal like the poetic and pastoral words of Jesus to the disciples. Do not worry. Why wouldn't I worry? Because like the disciples, you're not in this alone. Consider the lilies of the field. Consider that you sanctify what you are grateful for. You make holy that which you are thankful for. It is difficult to hate that for which you have given thanks. It is difficult to try and control that for which you are grateful. If I am truly thankful for who or what you are, it means that I no longer have power over you. I have power with you. Why? Because I recognize the other person, the other culture, the other religion, the stranger as set apart by God, as holy, as sanctified. You sanctify whatever you're grateful for. Jesus asks us to consider the lilies, assuming that we will then be grateful for the ways in which we are clothed, how they do not toil, how they receive, and he also points us toward humanity and brings us to a place where we are being asked to take the next step. And what else? What else might I consider? Who else might I consider? I'm not so sure about running out of here, or you running out of here shouting, "You should sanctify whatever you're grateful for. Sanctify whatever you're grateful for." It doesn't have great power as a catchphrase, I would imagine. But our broader public discourse could certainly use a heavy dose of that sentiment. And what am I grateful for? In this week of Thanksgiving, what has been sanctified in my mind of late? That's an easy one. This community, in its own way, is sacred, is sanctified, it is holy in my mind because I am grateful. A family from Somalia is holy, sacred, sanctified in my mind because I am thankful for them. Ahmed and Fatuma on Thursday, when they were dropped off at their place in Montclair, their closing words to me, "We are very happy." Friday morning, did a follow-up visit with them. Bethany Schmidt, their caseworker from Church World Service, came over at the same time. I decided to take the 4-year-old boy, Zechariah, outside for a run and a play while the parents talked to Bethany. I thought I misheard him the first time he said it. "Run, Uncle." About 20 minutes later, Polly Monsees showed up, and then I knew I'd heard him right the first time. He just looked at Polly and said, "Hello, Auntie." There is much to be grateful for. We, this community of faith, we do indeed aspire to something greater than this. Peace be with you.